ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We are studying here Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, and we are towards the close of the 4th chapter. The name of the chapter being Maya and the evolution of the conception of God. And let us remember from the beginning to get the proper spiritual connection that in the first lecture on necessity of religion, Swamiji has shown that man is incomplete without the struggle to go beyond the senses or the struggle for the infinite. And in the second lecture on the real nature of man, which is based upon the Kathopanishad, presenting death as the inevitable fact of life, Swamiji has told this, is this the end? And then he has gone on to prove that behind the body there is mind, and behind the mind there is the self, which has to be not matter, and because it is not matter, because it has no form, so it has to be infinite, and infinite cannot be two, so it has to be one without a second, and that is our real nature. And today what we feel our real nature is an illusory appearance. It may be a reflection, but it is not real, it is unreal. That is the today's what we feel is our real nature. Then on the lecture on Maya and illusion, which was based upon Shatashatar Upanishad, and more so, I felt, based upon the Shankar's introduction to the Brahma Sutras, where he has said that consciousness and matter can never mix together, and yet the fact of life is that our life is a mixture of consciousness and matter, and we have coupled up real and unreal. Matter is unreal, so we have coupled up real and unreal, and on basis on that wrong perception of ourselves and the world is the every sphere of our life. He has shown it particularly for the search of knowledge, because mind is conditioned by, rather mind is defined as time, space and causation, and the desire to go beyond time, space and causation to find the source for time, space and causation, we have to struggle through time, space and causation. And that is Maya, because we cannot give up the struggle, nor can we come out of the boundary. So in every sphere of life, showing mother's love for a child, people call it unselfish love, but it is a morbid attachment. Similarly, in every sphere of life, he has shown that. And it was a brilliant lecture, quite a lengthy lecture, and as we knew that Sri Ramakrishna had to appear and tell him that enough, more than this they cannot bear. Because Swamiji was lifting the minds of everybody. Once we feel our life is a contradiction, then only the real struggle to go beyond will arise. And so, he has raised a question that why we are seeing the unreal things as real. And then he said, because we are running after the senses, so running after so many desires, so a sort of mist has been created between ourselves and reality. Our vision has become distorted. Then, in the 4th lecture we are studying now, Swamiji has specially referring to Shatashatar Upanishad, but going back to Samhitas, because every idea of the Upanishads is found as a germ in Samhitas, and Swamiji has a wonderful way. Suppose from the Samhitas we find that Indra behaved in an irrational way, Swamiji immediately goes to the Greek mythology and Roman mythology and finds that Jehovah is the same. So when we understand that two different, more than one different mythologies refer to same type of irrational behavior, we understand that it is not India or Greece, it is the human mind. That is Swamiji's wonderful way. Everywhere Swamiji takes the help of other religions, and he has said clearly that your Bible helps me to understand my Bible better. My Bible helps me to understand your Bible better. And so he advocated a study of comparative religions. So, anyway, incidentally I am telling, in China it is not possible to start a Ramakrishna Mission Center. But in the Beijing University, a chair has been created for study of comparative religions and in the name of Swamiji. So, this is the thing which Swamiji wants us all to study, to broaden our vision, to understand clearly certain points. So, in the same anomaly is seen, we understand it is not Greece or India, it is the human mind. And then Swamiji has explained that because we had not developed any ethical sense in ourselves, so the God is only more powerful than us. Why does this or why did that? The why question did not arise in us. When the mental evolution takes place in humanity, when the man becomes developed, then he understands a bit of unselfishness, rationality, why of everything he seeks. And then things appear incongruous to him. Swamiji said, from our childhood we had so many ideas which appear irrational to us now. So even today he said the problem is not solved. He is referring to the monotheistic thought everywhere. Whether it is among the Vaishnavas of India or in any other religion, Christianity, Islam or Jewish religion or wherever there is an idea of a personal God without reference to the impersonal absolute, without reference to the transcendent reality, then this question does not vanish. It always remains. And that question Swamiji stated in this way. I will read out that sentence of Swamiji where he has stated that question. I overshot that. The question remains to be answered and it cannot be answered. Why under the reign of an almighty and all-loving God of the universe should diabolical things be allowed to remain? Why so much more misery than happiness and so much more wickedness than good? We may shut our eyes to all these things, but the fact still remains that this world is a hideous world. So, the why of it cannot be understood. Only when we refer to the absolute nature of the reality and self-contradictory, unreal nature of the world like a shadow, then only we understand this. Why there is evil in the world can be understood only when we understand that the world is not real, world is a shadow. And in the shadow world, these things exist. And the solution lies not to find a solution here, not at all. The solution lies in transcending this world, in going beyond this unreal world and live with reality. And in that respect, Swamiji has told, we are born as competitors of nature, not to be natural so-called. So that is the lecture we are in, and Swamiji has come back to that theory of Maya, that is the only explanation. The only explanation of why there is so much misery cannot be found in the theology of monotheistic religions, which take for granted a God which is merciful and kind and dear. But the solution lies in understanding that this world is a contradiction, this world is a shadowy world, this world is an unreal world. In that only we can understand it. Now, let us go to the current place where we are reading. Swamiji brought a very new and important point here, that freedom is the first sign of growth. Because in India we allowed freedom in the matters of religious thought, there is so much growth of religion in India. We did not allow freedom in society, so the society became bound. And in Western countries, social freedom is tremendous, but religious freedom was totally curbed at a time, in Swamiji's time especially. And so, the religion had a stunted growth. They could not go beyond this monotheism at all. So many defects remained. The present state of mind, do you know, one thing which Swamiji did not find at that time is that, of course, in Swamiji's time it has started, that the rational thinkers left religious belief. Today, in England and Australia, I have heard from very reliable people, churches are emptying day by day. Nobody goes to particular churches and they are taken over by the Indians or Hindus, and temples are being in place of churches. I have heard of two countries, England and Australia. I do not know other countries. So, this is the state of affairs. If you stick to some belief which is not rational, then this happens. People's faith is shaken, and the rational people do not want to remain in the limited fold. So freedom has to be given. That was the word which Swamiji was telling. Now we come to this. We see then, this is the para we are starting now. We see then that through freedom the sciences were built. Now what sciences Swamiji means here? Sciences plural. As we proceed, you will find Swamiji does not mean physical sciences only. Physical sciences are also well built in the freedom. But psychological sciences, religious sciences, so all the sciences, real search for truth is called science here, in Swamiji's definition. Science is the rational search, genuine search for the truth, unity. And so, through freedom the sciences were built, and in them we have two sets of opinions. The one, the materialistic and denouncing, and the other, the positive and constructive. Swamiji is referring more to the religious sciences than others. This materialistic, Swamiji calls it materialistic, which are denouncing. That means because the ideas are not congruent, throw away religion. That is materialism. Materialistic theories are telling us that because the religious theories are not congruent with our ideas of today, throw away religion. Or go on criticizing them. This is the defect, that is the defect. Take away faith from people. So that is the one type of position taken by sciences. And the other, the positive and constructive. Positive means find the value in that religion. Constructive means add values to that religion. Positive and constructive means find the values of that religion, and constructive means add to those values and you will get religion. Instead of showing the defects and condemning it, you find the values which are there and add more values to make it rational. It is a most curious fact that in every society you find them. Curious fact because it is human nature. So whether Eastern or Western or this religion or that religion, we always find these two sets. Supposing there is an evil in society, you will find immediately one group rise up and denounce it in vindictive fashion, which sometimes degenerates into fanaticism. Fanaticism means if this evil is cured, everything will be all right. Such a limited idea comes. And Swamiji has shown in the both chapters of Maya that if we remove one defect, another arises. It is not a solution at all. It is like chronic rheumatism, Swamiji has said. Drive it from one part of the body, it goes to the other part. So, this vindictive, this generally sometimes degenerates into fanaticism when the mind becomes more narrow, rigid, that this particular evil, if it is removed, this society will become nice. If this particular solution is applied, the society will become nice. This idea is called fanaticism. There are fanatics in every society. And Swamiji makes a remark here, and women frequently join in these outcries because of their impulsive nature. Anyway, Swamiji's observation that in America and England, they were the women who find fanatic. That means if this is cured, everything will become all right. Because of their impulsive nature, Swamiji says, they join. Every fanatic who gets up and denounces something can secure a following. In India, the fanatic groups arose, Arya Samaj, Brahma Samaj, and they got so many followers because of the narrowness of human mind. It is very easy to break down. A maniac can break everything he likes. Everything he likes means he likes to break. Otherwise the sentence would be, maniac breaks everything which he dislikes. But it would be hard for him to build up anything. You give some faith to the people, you add some faith to the people, you give them constructive values to go up. These fanatics may do some good according to their light. They will think we have done some good. But much more harm. Because when the faith is lost, everything is lost. And nothing remains with the man by this criticism. Because social institutions are not made in a day. And to change them means removing the cause. Find out why this defect has entered. What is at the root? What is the human mental function at the root of this evil in the religion or society? And if you can remove that, everything will be removed. And how to remove that? Make the man grow. Make the man grow to the rational or correct ideas. Then that thing will be removed from his mind. And then the evil will be removed. That is the way. Supposing there is an evil, denouncing it will not remove it. But you must go to work at the root. Find out the cause, then remove it. And the effect will be removed. Also, mere outcry will not produce any effect unless indeed it produces misfortune. That is the thing. If you go on criticizing, it produces misfortune, no good result. There were others. No, Swamiji shows the other side. There were others who had sympathy in their hearts and who understood the idea that we must go deep into the cause. They were the great saints. One fact you must remember, that all the great teachers of the world have declared that they came not to destroy but to fulfill. That is famous Christ saying. And Swamiji says, all the great teachers have said, we have not come to destroy but to fulfill. when this is a direct reference to Jesus. Jesus tells that the old laws set by Moses, 10 commandments, they will remain till the world remains. But those who want to go to God have to develop higher ideas. There he says, I have come to fulfill, not to destroy. So the old ideas should grow and you will find more positive ideas. One fact you must remember, that all the great teachers of the world have declared that they came not to destroy but to fulfill. Many times this has not been understood. What happens? We find that, Swamiji is telling, and their forbearance has been thought to be an unworthy compromise with existing popular opinions. Example, let us take Indian example. Shankaracharya has been shown to be narrow. He talks only of sannyasis. He denounces women. Now if you see the prevalent condition of society of those days, this idea was current in society, is not his new ideas. And I will tell you one place. His grand teacher, Gaudapada, has a wonderful treatise called the Mandukya Karikas. And in the Alata Shanti Prakaran, there is a reference. Now in Sanskrit we cannot make a sentence unless we add some gender to it. Either it is masculine or feminine or neutral gender. So the general term used is that you call it male chauvinism, but that is a fact of life. That anyone who realizes this is the great jnani, and people cannot understand him. Now anyone, I have told you in English, but in Sanskrit, yak kaschit. So there the ya refers to male, masculine gender. But the spirit does not speak of that. Shankaracharya picks it up, the spirit, and says, Triya Dayo Api. Please remember, you are free to criticize Shankar. But please remember, when it comes to truth, he is uncompromising. Where Gaudapada has expressed an idea that whoever gets real knowledge is very, very rare in this world and people cannot understand it, he has to use a language, and the language, normal language uses is masculine, so uses that anyone who, in a masculine sense. But the spirit of that is that anyone is anyone. So there Shankar particularly adds this word, Striyadayo api, even women. And so we must understand that now another thing is Brahmin, Brahmin, Brahmin. Shankar says, now the current society had it, that the Brahmins were only running after Brahman, the others were busy, Kshatriyas were busy in ruling the world, Vaishyas in earning money, Shudras in serving people. So the question of Brahmin comes. So we feel that he is compromising with the ideas. Swamiji says, no. They understood that people have these ideas, why not give them correct ideas? And so, that is all the saints which have done. So Swamiji says, I have given one example. You are free to criticize him and call him narrow, I have nothing to do with that, but to understand things. Why the particular emphasis comes, once you understand, you will forget about it. Many times this has not been understood, and their forbearance has been thought to be an unworthy compromise with existing popular opinions. Even now, you occasionally hear that these prophets and great teachers were rather cowardly and dare not say and do what they thought was right. People are even now telling like that, but that was not so. Fanatics little understand the infinite power of love in the hearts of these great sages who looked upon the inhabitants of this world as their children. Here again I will refer to one statement of Shankar which he has repeatedly done. When he talks of Upanishads, he says the Shruti, he personifies them. The Shrutis which are 1,000 times more compassionate than any father and mother, or compassionate more than 1,000 fathers and mothers, rather 1,000 times more compassionate than any father and mother that Shrutis are. So, that is the heart of Shankara. That is the heart of the sages, how they feel that all the people are their children. And so, children make mistakes, but they are to be corrected, not denounced. And so, they were the real fathers, the real gods, filled with infinite sympathy and patience for everyone. They were ready to bear and forbear. They knew how human society should grow, and patiently, slowly, surely went on applying their remedies. Not by denouncing and frightening people, but by gently and kindly leading them upwards, step by step. I will give another example of the Gita, which is of course the broadest scripture we have found, where Shri Krishna says, Na buddhi bhedam janayad adhiganam karma sanginam joshayat sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharan. You find people are working, they do not know the truth. And you don't tell them don't work, philosophize, that will be create confusion in them. But rather, encourage them, and you should encourage them to go forward. Sri Ramakrishna has a story on that. A woodcutter, one brahmachari made a woodcutter, met and told him you should go forward. So he went to the next forest, sandalwood forest and silver mine and gold mine and like that. And so, that is the way to proceed. I will tell one or two examples. Swami Vivekananda's example. His paid disciple, Shuddhananda Swami, was massaging his feet. And some Pandits came from a locality in Calcutta, and they took up the position of the Mimamsakas, who said that karma will give you everything. And Swamiji clearly showed that without the change of consciousness, you cannot get mukti. They had to agree. And when they went away, workers of the Kashi Sevashram came. You know the idea in Kashi, Ramakrishna Sevashram in Kashi? There are no images to be worshipped. The patients are the veritable forms of God. The rose plants and everything is already offered to them. That is the idea. And workers of that ashrama came. And Swamiji is telling them, you should provide soft chapatis, you should provide very good food to them. And he was inspiring them like anything. They went away happily. Swamiji did not talk that you should not work and you should philosophize. Then when they went away, his disciple Shuddhan Swami said, Swamiji, I am confused. You told different to those people and different to these people. Will a person not, a flat brain man will say, his Swamiji is compromising. Swamiji said, I have not told you anything. You state your problem. He said, how shall I get mukti? Swamiji says, by serving me. So, each person has to follow his path, and that is called adhikar. And these people understand that adhikar very well, so they do not denounce and encourage them to do their activity. Another example I wanted to quote, parallel. Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivananda. My Guruji had gone to him and to read the Mandukya Upanishad, and in between came the Kashi Sevashram workers. There was nothing in front of him, but imaginary, as if there is a plate and we have to knead the wheat powder, atta, and unless you knead it well, the rotis, chapatis will not become soft. So Mahapurush was showing him with all his power by his hands, like this, like this, like this. That is what you should do. And serve them, they are gods. And when they went away, he told our Swami, open the book now, what the Gaudapad says, read. So, not that he is compromising to the ideas of the people. He is encouraging and fulfilling. That is what Swamiji is telling here. They knew how human society should grow, and patiently, slowly, surely went on applying their remedies, not by denouncing and frightening people, but by gently and kindly leading them upward step by step. Of course, the supreme example of this is Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, there is no doubt about it. How to sympathize with everyone who struggles towards God, how to encourage him in his path, and how to lead him onwards and onwards. If somebody in the world up till now knew best, it is Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother and his disciples. Swamiji is calling, such were the writers of the Upanishads. So, the conception of evolution of God, in that Swamiji is talking, they did not denounce the gods, they did not denounce the worshipper, they knew it is a natural growth. And so to the grown-up man, they are showing you go this way. They know full well how the old ideas of God were not reconcilable with the advanced ethical ideas of their time. They know full well that what the atheists were preaching contained a good deal of truth, nay, great nuggets of truth, because they want everything to be rational. But at the same time, they understood that those who wish to sever the thread that bound the beads, who wanted to build a new society in the air, would entirely fail. New society in the air, without connecting all the beads. That is the expression Swamiji gives. So lift a man from where he is. We never build anew. We simply change places. We cannot have anything new. We only change the position of things. About this new again, some fanaticism is there. Especially, I would say in south of India. And when I say south, I mean Tamil Nadu. Because I lived in Tamil Nadu for 10 years. Now, people ask one question there. Orthodox, so-called Orthodox people. Has Swami Vivekananda taught something new? If he has taught something new, throw it away. If he has not taught something new, what is the use of him? That is the question raised by them quite often. What is the reply? Has Shankaracharya taught something new which is not in the Vedas? If he has taught something new, because they refer everything to the Vedas without seeing them. If Swami Vivekananda has taught something not in the Vedas, throw it away. If it is in the Vedas, what he has taught? You ask them, if Shankaracharya has taught anything new which is not in the Vedas, throw it away. And if he has taught what is in the Vedas, then why he has taught? So, this argument itself is wrong. That is because of the fanatic sanskaras in the mind. Old becomes gold. Yesterday's thing becomes tradition today. It may be false, wrong, but that has become the tradition. I have seen some funny traditions in places. Our ashrama is like that. Why? No, why? So, that is the question. That is the fanaticism. Swamiji will tell in this very book, in the chapter on macrocosm, I am not going to tell you anything new. I am not going to tell you anything new, Swamiji will tell. Then what is he doing? What the rishis told, I will tell in ordinary man's language. What the gods told, I will tell in human language. I am not going to tell anything new. So Swamiji has used scientific words. Now the science has changed. Some people will find fault with Swamiji. But as per the day, Swamiji has explained the old thing in the way in which the modern man can catch it. That is the glory. And so, Swamiji himself is telling here, we never build anew. We simply change places. We cannot have anything new. We only change the position of things. The seed grows into the tree. Patiently and gently, we must direct our energies towards the truth and fulfill the truth that exists, not try to make new truths. Try to make new truths means falsity. Thus, instead of denouncing these old ideas of God as unfit for modern times, the ancient sages began to seek out the reality that was in them. The result was the Vedanta philosophy. And out of the old deities, out of the monotheistic God, the ruler of the universe, they found yet higher and higher ideas. They did not say that monotheistic God is wrong. The Sankhya philosophers or the so-called rationalists, as Swamiji is telling, they are materialists. They will say that this is wrong, throw it away. Vedanta says you will find the explanation in the higher reality. And through that faith in the higher reality, you can worship God, you can worship whatever you are worshipping. Sri Ramakrishna is a beautiful example on this. He says a child, the grown-up sons are telling father, papa, dad. The youngest son is not able to speak. He says pa. Does the father not understand that he is addressing me? This is what Sri Ramakrishna said. So he says worship of any nature, even if that of clay, what wrong is there? God knows he is being worshipped. Slowly he will grow. And another example, that if you want to target something, first you have to take a big target, then smaller, then smaller. Like that man has to practice, and that is how the step-by-step Adhikarvad and the all-consuming, all-including philosophy was born. Sri Ramakrishna does not preach anything new philosophy, but he harmonizes all the existing thoughts by showing for whom it is fitting. Thus, instead of denouncing these old ideas of God as unfit for modern times, the ancient sages began to seek out the reality that was in them. The result was the Vedanta philosophy, and out of the old deities, out of the monotheistic God, old deities, monotheistic God, the ruler of the universe, they found yet higher and higher ideas in what is called the impersonal absolute, the Nirguna Brahma. They found oneness throughout the universe. Oneness throughout the universe. Out of the universal absolute. And then he quotes, this quotation appears in Shata. Originally I found it in Kathopanishad also. He who sees in this world of manifoldness that one running through all, in this world of death, you find that one infinite life, and in this world of insentience and ignorance, you find that one light and knowledge. Unto him belongs eternal peace, unto none else, unto none else. Eternal peace belongs to one who among the changes sees the unchanging, who among the conscious being sees the original consciousness, who finds the universal among the individuals, he gets peace. That is how slowly, starting from the crude ideas of God, coming into monotheism, where Swamiji says Vedanta starts and then grows and teaches the Advaita. That is the end of this beautiful lecture on the Maya and evolution of the conception of God. We turn now to the next lecture, Maya in Freedom. One point here. I forget the name of one of the Shrotas. Last time I made a surmise that the gap is of 5 days and 2 days. So it can be Sunday and Friday or Sunday and Tuesday. But somebody has found out, please excuse me, I am missing your name. Somebody has found out, one of you, Shrotas, that the lectures were held on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Where is the gap of 2 days? It is Tuesday to Thursday. Where gap of 5 days, Thursday to Tuesday. So, thanking him, without his name, I proceed further. And this lecture on Maya and Freedom, delivered in London 22nd October 1896. The previous lecture was on 20 October, this is 22nd October. And this is a continuation of the lecture on Maya and illusion. This Maya and the evolution of conception of God is an idea of how the idea develops. For that Swamiji brought from Sangitas, and how the idea developed, that Swamiji added. But the lecture, that which had abruptly ended, that lecture as if is resumed in this next lecture. And that lecture showed first the theory and then in practical life how this contradiction is working. This lecture starts with that contradiction. And so we turn to the lecture on Maya and Freedom, delivered in London 22nd October 1896. Trailing clouds of glory we come, says the poet. Not all of us come as trailing clouds of glory. However, some of us come as trailing black frogs. There can be no question about that. That is not the point, but every one of us comes into this world to fight, as on a battlefield. We come here weeping to fight our way as well as we can, and to make a path for ourselves through this infinite ocean of life. Forward we go, having long ages behind us and an immense expanse beyond. So on we go, till death comes and takes us off the field. Victorious or defeated, we do not know, and this is Maya. So struggle, and that is why Swamiji says, not that we come all from the clouds of glory, we come from the previous state, and whether glory or not, we want to struggle and go forward, but we are thwarted by our ideas being limited, and we are not able to cross. Unless we understand this is Maya, unless we understand this is a contradiction in terms, and seek the solution that this is an unreal shadow, and go to the reality, we cannot find a solution. So he says that whether we are victorious or defeated, we do not know. We think we have defeated him, we have defeated that, but what have we gained? Have we gained perfection? So long as we do not gain perfection, we can't call ourselves victorious, because we are getting defeated in front of this nature, which is Maya. And so, with this, Swamiji makes a start here. Whatever may be our beginning, glorious or ordinary, but we want to struggle. And the struggle becomes meaningless because we are struggling within that time, space and causation, struggling within the field of our mind. And we are rotating and rotating there, we are not going forward. This is what happens. Progress of science, where we are leading. Are we leading to happiness more? Hope is dominant in the heart of childhood. The whole world is a golden vision to the opening eyes of the child. He thinks his will is supreme. As he moves onward, at every step, nature stands as an adamantine wall, barring his future progress. He may hurl himself against it again and again, striving to break through. The further he goes, the further recedes the ideal, till death comes and there is release perhaps. And this is Maya. When the death comes, there is release perhaps. Because the sanskaras are there, you will have to be born again, you will have to suffer and enjoy the results of what you have done in this life. So it appears that there is a release, but it is only an appearance. That is Maya. A man of science comes, rises. He is thirsting after knowledge. No sacrifice is too great. No struggle too hopeless for him. He moves onward, discovering secret after secret of nature, searching out these secrets from her innermost heart. And what for? What is it all for? Why should we give him glory? Why should he acquire fame? Does not nature do infinitely more than any human being can do? And nature is dull, insentient. Why should we glory to imitate the dull, the insentient? Nature can hurl a thunderbolt of any magnitude to any distance. If a man can do one small part as much, we praise him and laud him to the skies. Why? Why should we praise him for imitating nature, imitating death, imitating dullness, imitating insentience? That insentience itself Swamiji calls death and dullness. The force of gravitation can pull to pieces the biggest mass that ever existed, and yet it is insentient. What glory is there in imitating the insentient? Yet we are all struggling after that, and this is Maya. I told you one story. One famous scientist came to my Guruji, and for 20 minutes he was telling, I did this, I did that. He had achieved a great from the worldly point of view. But after listening 20 minutes, my Guruji said, 10 years back, did you know where the wind will blow? So you have followed a drift. The senses drag the human soul out. Man is seeking for pleasure and for happiness where it can never be found. Because the objects are evanescent and the desire never becomes less. If you enjoy an object, the object will vanish, the desire will grow. How will you find happiness there? For countless ages we are all taught that this is futile and vain. There is no happiness here, but we cannot learn. It is impossible for us to do so except through our own experiences. If the man in front of me stumbles and falls, that should be listened to me, but I want to stumble and fall. That is what happens throughout the history. Except through our own experiences. We try them and a blow comes. Do we learn then? Not even then. Like moths hurling themselves against the flame, we are hurling ourselves again and again into sense pleasures. It is growing day by day, hoping to find satisfaction there. We return again and again with freshened energy. Thus we go on, till crippled and cheated we die. And this is Maya. Crippled and cheated we die. We cannot come out of the desire for more sense pleasure, and sense pleasure is finite. We can never have infinite sense pleasure, and we are cheated and we die. This is Maya. So with our intellect, it is not only pleasure. In our desire to solve the mysteries of the universe, we cannot stop our questioning. We feel we must know and cannot believe that no knowledge is to be gained. A few steps and there arises the wall of beginningless and endless time which we cannot surmount, which is beyond time, the truth. But we have to struggle in the time only. So Swamiji calls it beginningless and endless time. A few steps and there appears a wall of boundless space which cannot be surmounted. Space is infinite so far as we are concerned. And how can we solve the problem of what is beyond space? And the whole is irrevocably bound in by the walls of cause and effect. Yes, that is in our mind only. We cannot go beyond them. Yet we struggle and still have to struggle, and this is Maya. With every breath, with every pulsation of the heart, with every one of our movements, we think we are free, and the very same moment we are shown that we are not. Bound slaves, nature's bound slaves are in body, in mind, in all our thoughts, in all our feelings, and this is Maya. And Swamiji has not shown, said, in spirit or in soul. That is free. But unless we realize that through our mind and body we cannot come out of nature. That mother-child he brings again. There was never a mother who did not think her child was a born genius. The most extraordinary child that was ever born. She dotes upon her child. Her whole soul is in the child. The child grows up, perhaps becomes a drunkard, a brute, ill-treats the mother, and the more it ill-treats her, the more her love increases. The world lauds it as the unselfish love of the mother, little dreaming that the mother is a born slave. She cannot help that. She would 1,000 times rather throw off the burden, but she cannot. So she covers it with a mass of flowers, which she calls wonderful love, and this is Maya. How the sense of time changes is the next topic in the Maya. We can take it on the next turn. So, sorry for missing your name. Thanking you. Was found that it is on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I close it for today. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Vire Shamtam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanam.